Oh, hello, didn't see you there. How are you doing? Hey, this is Rob Hughes. You know Rob Hughes, don't you? You might have seen him on Crime Watch. Yeah. He's also Ronnie Corbett's body double in Sorry. Aren't you?
That was a great gig.
It was a great gig.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
For our American cheap things, you might not know what we're on about, but...
It doesn't matter, does it? Let's face it.
Yeah, what's the other one? It's a plane. Who's that? What's that?
Fancy Island.
Yeah. Well, what are you trying to say, like? Every single time we're doing this, we seem to do a bad Geordie accent.
Yeah, so there'll be another one along fairly shortly, I'm pretty sure.
Won't be Scottish, though, because Tam Dean Byrne will have me. Yeah. Anyway... welcome to another What the Papers Said. There we go. That's what we're looking at, okay?
Maybe just shift it there.
There we go.
Okay. Great.
Whoa. It's a great shot of Bowie. Let's face it, nearly every shot of Bowie is a great shot, isn't it?
It looks like one of those Steve Shapiro shots, doesn't it, that one? I wonder if it is.
I think this is from The Man Who Fell to Earth, is it?
Yeah, but he was on set, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He took a lot of those.
Is that what you mean? Yeah, right, okay. But yeah, it's a great cover. To be honest, the actual edition of the New Musical Express from the 23rd of August 1975 is a bit dry.
Yeah, well, it was a strange sort of transitional time in rock music, wasn't it? Wasn't a lot going on.
Do you know what? This is where, this period in time where people were saying punk rock had to happen. And funnily enough, looking at this, you could only agree. But not only that, the NME had been through quite a playful period, hadn't it?
Yeah.
You know, Charles Shaw-Murray, 1973, 74. And then, of course, the NME got really playful in the 80s, where you had Seeding Wells and all those people.
Sure.
And they were just making stories up. And it probably went a little bit too far, actually. But for some reason, this particular episode is just so dry. You just would not believe. There's some funny stuff in there which we will get to, but there's not a lot of it.
No, well, the other thing, around the same time, I know there's an issue either of Melody Maker or NME where the cover was somebody looking in a mirror and staring back at them from the mirror was a reflection of a really old bloke. The implication being, as rock just kind of, is it just old dad music? You know, what's happened to it? Why is it so dull?
Well, we'll get to that possibly. I mean, by flitting through it quite quickly, because there's some really boring bits in this thing. This, though, thankfully, isn't one of them. Yeah. This is absolutely brilliant. Reid and a very personal problem. So, talking about Lou Reed here, okay, now I'm going to read this for you because it is crackers. And I laughed out loud when I read it. A mystery developed this week over Lou Reed's cancellation of his projected European tour with the Star Trucking package, which would have included an appearance by him at the Reading Festival. The cable sent to the package promoters by his management said that he was unable to come due to physical inability following his tour in the Far East. But it now transpires that early this month he called off a concert in New Zealand because of a personal problem of such magnitude that he was unable to perform. Now, 1975, August, it's a year and a bit since I went to see him at the Fugate Hall in Manchester. And it was recorded for the Rock and Roll Animal tour and the album and all that. And he was off his box.
Yeah.
Completely off his box. And at one point on that tour, I know that he'd shot up on stage with a syringe and got arrested, and they found out he was shooting up water. But that's the kind of part of Lou Reed's career where he lost the plot completely.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can put two and two together. Maybe that has something to do with it, but it gets funny, believe you me. The gig should have taken place at Wellington Town Hall, and 2,000 people had crammed into the venue and had already watched the support act when the decision to cancel was taken. According to the Wellington Dominion newspaper, the audience took the news quietly. Nobody seemed to care. They just got up and walked out, stated the report. Okay, now this is where it gets really bonkers. But another local paper, the Wellington Evening Post, obtained a remarkable interview with the promoter, Ron Blackmore. He claimed that it was his decision to cancel the show and was then reported as saying, quote, Reed had a very, very personal problem that should never have damn well happened. It's so personal and serious that I can't even tell you about it off the record. Okay. If you could imagine what it's like to get a call from the other side of the world and be told that your mother was not only a drug addict, but a hooker, right? And that she'd hooked some of your friends, then you might be able to understand how he was feeling. That's not what happened, but it's something that's just turned around, and it will be like you and I might be able to handle it, but Reed is so introverted that he couldn't. Lou Reed, introverted, it's a word that you could use, but He's got this whole scenario that he just made up about your mum being a prostitute.
But it's not that.
But it's not that. It's nothing like that.
It's something as bad as that.
Well, it never came out as far as I'm aware.
No, I'm trying to think. 75. No, he wasn't in a great place, wasn't he? He was probably falling out with his record company, but that's not a story of that magnitude.
It's not, no. So anyway, he didn't do it, and it was cancelled. Another interesting story here.
I just seen that. So Gabriel to leave Genesis is denied. So that's a report in the Enemy from July. What was about
a month before,
month and a half before that. But now, of course, he has quit.
Now he has quit. And, we love Genesis. And I saw Genesis doing the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour, the last tour they did with Gabriel. But the story was that some elements of the band, you've interviewed them anyway, haven't you? Some of them.
Yeah.
I haven't. But the story is that some of the band, Tony Banks probably, really didn't like the fact that Peter Gabriel was wearing all this mad clobber, particularly on the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour.
Yeah.
So you had the Slipper Man, which was just this very testicular monster, and it was a little bit like Frank Sidebottom, once again, for the British cheap things, probably. But the microphone was so far away in this big head. It looked like H.R. Puffin stuff as well, a little bit. The microphone was so far away from him that it was a little bit muffled here and there when he was wearing that particular costume. And it really annoyed the band. The band just thought, this is getting in the way of the music. And they might have had a point a little bit, but I saw 2 nights on that tour. I was very, very lucky. I went down both nights to the Palace Theatre without a ticket and got in both nights and had amazing seats for 2 different reasons. But it was just one of the greatest things I've ever seen and remains that to this day. So, but there was also the story that came out later that Peter Gabriel's wife was about to have a baby and he wanted some time off. And he was just starting to build for them really nicely. And the band didn't want him to have the time off.
Well, I was talking about this with Rutherford and Banks, actually, and it was just about that. So Gabriel was going through a really difficult time because his wife was in labour and it was a difficult pregnancy. So she was in hospital, and so in between sessions for the album, he'd be dashing to and fro down these country lanes to London to sort of spend some time with her. And they weren't, by their own admission, they weren't sympathetic to his case. They just said, what are you playing at? We've got an album to record here, you need to be here. So it was that kind of schism that started to develop. I think it was already there, because there was a kind of certain amount of unspoken jealousy.
Right.
About Gabriel getting all the attention with Genesis, but that was a real breaking point. And you can understand it. And I've talked to them all about it. And in Rutherford's book, which is quite candid in places, he does admit, look, I wish we were just like really, really unsympathetic to Peter. We were bad about it. We didn't even understand in any sort of shape or form what he was going through.
But most bands, the focal point is a singer anyway, as we know. But you got Peter Gabriel he had the bat wings for Watching the Skies, he had the mask for Nursery Crime. He had
the dress.
He had the dress, he had the fox head for Supper's Ready. Yeah. So he was so visual and amazing that you just think, and they are obviously brilliant. I mean, Tony Banks, his keyboard playing, he's just like, if that wasn't in Genesis, then it wouldn't have been the same band by a country mile. But now he has quit. Peter Gabriel has finally left Genesis following weeks of widespread speculation hinting at his imminent departure. Enemy exclusively reported 6 weeks ago that reliable sources were suggesting a split in the near future, but at the time the band's publicist and recording company both vehemently denied the rumour. They said reports were already sparked by the fact that Genesis were inactive and taking their first holiday for 2 years. It is strange, and they do. There's a statement there from the record company and stuff.
I like this. I just saw that at the bottom there. Okay, I didn't know that. So obviously they're auditioning singers, aren't they? And this was a long process before they decided to stay with somebody in the band. But one of them, Nick Lowe.
I didn't know that until I saw it. So Nick Lowe, you will know who Nick Lowe is probably. I mean, he had the solo career with Stiff Records, but he produced the first Damn records. He was in Brinsley Schwartz, who were a pub rock band. So how much further away from the mad prog of Genesis can you get than Nick Lowe? Nick Lowe singing for Genesis. Can you even imagine? Wow. And the story is that they auditioned loads of people, and in the end, they just stuck with Phil Collins, obviously. But if you listen to a lot of the early Genesis tunes, you can hear Phil Collins' vocals in the background.
Yeah,
and it makes sense. Great voice and all that. This is a weird one. Wood Remains, a Stone, Cropper joining faces. This is another thing as well.
Yeah.
So Steve Cropper, just legendary guitarist, Knock on Wood and all that stuff. He was supposed to be a replacement for Ronnie Wood, who was to be a Rolling Stone.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
No.
And that Ronnie Wood thing was going on and off for a long time, wasn't it? I think he knew.
Yeah. Now we've got the David Bowie thing here, which we will get to in a short while. We've got the charts here. Dark Side of the Moon is still in the album charts. Of course it was. It's probably still there now.
Yeah. Okay.
But going through this, we'll just talk through it, but there's not a lot going on. There's this thing here where they've had a stab at humour. So it's a fingerprint file, and it is Mick Jagger. Okay, and again, can you see that okay there?
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
All right. And so it's a kind of spoof Q&A with him. So you've got name, Mick Jacket, alias, Buse, Grove, Philip, Gnome, age 26, occupation, dancer, rope swinger, yells, anything considered. Distinguishing marks, dandruff. Favourite food, hot. Oh, my aching sides. Favourite colour, blue, yellow, and a sort of silky pink. Favourite TV show, The Queen's Christmas Message. Favourite rodent, badger. Religion, secret. Prejudices, obvious. Pet hate, my rat. Most hated pet, being molested by women journalists physically. So, it's not funny.
No, it's not.
It doesn't really work, but they've tried, bless them. They've tried to put a bit of colour into what is otherwise a really, really dull edition of the Enemy.
Yes.
But also, you wouldn't do this these days. There's a piece about Stevie Wonder here, and the headline is Blind, Gifted and Loaded, which is a play on Young, Gifted and Black. And if you don't believe me, then there it is.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, all right then, let's move on. There's this piece here, which is about a PR guy called Les Perrin.
Oh, famous. Yeah, he was a famous Svengali, wasn't he?
I've never heard of him.
Les Perrin, oh yeah.
He worked with Dylan by the look of it, and Billie Holiday, so the heavyweights are in there.
He was kind of the main agent in Britain. So post-war, real old school agent.
Well, I mean, looking at the photographs, you've got Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, and Jagger. But again, even the layout is pretty kind of flat, right? But it gets worse. Bet you can't wait. There's an interview with Robin Trower there.
Okay.
You've got the singles being reviewed that week by Mick Farron.
Yeah, from place?
The Deviants was
The
it.
Deviants, that's right, of course. Leo Sayer, George Melly, Kraftwerk's in there.
Yeah, that's
otherwise,
it,
it's
really.
Susie Quattro, Peter Starstead.
Yeah, Desmond Decker. It's just David Carradine.
Right.
Kwai Chang Kane from
Yeah,
Kung
yeah.
Fu. Albums, there's nothing happening. EC was here. Eric Clapton is probably the most interesting one that I've spotted. There's just nothing going on. There's a thing here about festivals. That's a tough read.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, God. So, all right, well, go on. It's just boring, really, and I'm just boring you with me being boring. There's a 2-page
Oh, Tony Benyon, isn't
Tony
it?
Benyon cartoon about festivals, and so there's just nothing going on, really. You've got Dr. Feelgood there, we're just coming through. I had a look at the gig guide. There were nothing, no good gigs going on at all. It's just boring. So you got Robin Trower and you've got Yes. And that is Supertramp by the look of it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Go on.
The Bournemouth Village Bowl, Kraftwerk. So,
Right, yeah.
Obviously,
sure.
this is before Bowie's got to grips with them.
Sure.
And you've got Lemmy's Motorhead playing at the Marquee.
Yeah.
We came across this recently, but those of you out there who know anything about Motorhead, they were originally called Bastard.
Right.
The management
So that was
suggested.
That's right. So that would be just after he'd been kicked out, wouldn't it, of
Yeah.
Hawkwind?
And of course, Motorhead being a song by Lemmy for Hawkwind.
Yeah.
More of those same line drawings of club you can buy if you trust that the artist has caught it right.
Yeah.
And there isn't really very much more. Just going to the end here. Alice Cooper's new Los Angeles house burned down to the ground last Thursday while he was in New York. His valuable collection of paintings being totally destroyed in the process. This is a gossip page at the back, teasers. By refusing to appear unless they relented, Cher won a battle with CBS TV, who had wanted to bar the appearance of her formidable navel on the telly.
Right.
Which leads us to the quote of the week from her producer, George Shatler. Cher's belly button will be preserved for posterity.
Wow. Just going back to Alice Cooper, he had a real extensive painting collection. He had, didn't he have 2 by Andy Warhol, and he'd forgotten about them. And it was only about maybe 2 or 3 years ago he found them down the back of his cupboard somewhere in his apartment. Yeah.
Wow, okay. And there is a bit of Bowie here. This week's a stunning coincidence concerns the utterly unique David Bowie, currently starring as Thomas Jerome Newton in The Man Who Fell to Earth. Get this. So it's Newton says that the film publicity is unique personality and has to look like nobody else in the world looks, and that's what Nick Rogue said about him apparently. But David, meanwhile, had been nobbing with the Dalai Lama in nearby Taos.
Okay, in New Mexico,
where he discovered that when he played backwards his record, Young Americans, it sounds uncannily like a Tibetan chant.
So that's very kind of that loops right back to his early days, doesn't it, when he was doing Tibetan mime?
Yeah, it does. And lastly, from me on looking at this particularly dull edition of The Enemy, there's a mad story here about Stevie Marriott.
Oh yeah,
an old mate of Bowie's, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. It's a letter from Joan T. Taylor. Why on earth do you give space to such a sordid and degrading event as that described by has-been, Stevie Marriott last week? By the photo of him on your front page, you turned a needless and barbaric killing into a humorous incident.
What's this?
In the welfare state, nobody can starve, especially when he has God knows how many pounds worth of equipment. Come off it, Mr. Marriott and co. If you can't achieve public recognition by your own integrity and musical achievements, don't use the murder of a harmless old horse as a cheap and nasty publicity stunt. Mm-hmm. So the reply from the NME, it suggests that it was a ruse. So I'm reckoning that Stevie Marriott said that he was so poor he had to kill a horse and eat it.
Okay, all right.
But then they reckon it was just a publicity stunt by Stevie Marriott and his publicist, B.P. Fallon.
Oh, there you go. Because he is still in humble pie at this point, isn't he? He's not quite on his uppers at this stage.
Right, so, but B.P. Fallon, legendary, he did the PR for T-Rex.
Yeah, Beep.
And lots of different people, and U2. Is he still alive, B.P.
Yeah, he's still going. Yeah, he was recording with Third Man Records, for Jack White, I think.
Right, okay. So there you go. Obviously, they just made up a story about Stevie Marriott being so hungry. Yeah, a horse.
Well,
I'm so hungry I could eat a horse.
Well, that's
literally
probably the most controversial thing in that issue. Apart from the Lou Reed stuff, which is brilliant.
The Lou Reed stuff is funny.
So last time we did this, we had a copy each, didn't we?
We did.
But you're the only one who's got that copy, so I've had to well, actually no, I've copied and pasted this from another source.
Right. Okay,
so this is the Bowie interview, and it's great. Led off, as you say, by that great shot. So the title of this, David Bowie, watch out, mate. Hitler's on his way back. So instantly, you're transported to a time, it's screaming a headline for a start, but you're transported to that time in Bowie's life where he was coming out with pronouncements in the press that maybe he should have thought twice about. He wasn't looking after himself particularly well, which we know. This is probably the real sort of low point, isn't it? 75, he was trying to conquer it. He fell in love with America, fell in love with soul music, as we know. And he got to LA and he suddenly thought this isn't what it was cracked up to be.
Well, the thing is also, of course, I mean, we've all seen Cracked Actor, but he was a mad cocaine addict, wasn't he? And so this is around about the time of The Man Who Fell to Earth, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So he's filming it, isn't he, at this point?
And you've interviewed Nick Rogue as well.
Yeah.
There's loads going on here. But also, if you think about it, there's that great story about Nick Rogue saying, absolutely no drugs on set. David was clean. There was no cocaine flying about. Everybody else involved in it were like he was off his head. They were just saying like Bowie. He had so much cocaine in his body, it was just like defied gravity,
Sure.
But Nick Rogue was adamant there was no.
Yeah,
drugs
that's
on
what he
set.
said to me. Yeah, he said as far as he knew he was clean. Which we know is...
Well, he did do a drugs test on him every morning, did he?
No, he didn't. But anyway, so we should also mention, this has been licensed, we think, from... he didn't interview a guy called Anthony O'Grady. He was an Australian journalist, and he founded a magazine called RAM, R-A-M, in a couple of years just before this. So what he was doing, he would license stuff from the NME and Melody Maker and print it in his paper.
Right.
By the same token, he'd do the same. So he's done this by telephone from Los Angeles to somewhere in Australia. And there is a kind of strange feel to it because just the fact it's a phone interview, long distance, Bowie is very paranoid about the entire thing, isn't he? And it just gives you an insight into his kind of inner workings at this point in time and his sort of mental process and where he's at.
Well, I mean, people did use this period of his life as a stick to beat him with, didn't they?
Yeah.
And there's also, of course, all of that stuff about him having Nazi paraphernalia, going into Russia and getting it taken off him and all that kind of stuff. He was interested in it, but at this point in time, his interest just skirts a little bit too close to admiration, ill-judged admiration, which he later went later down the line he kind of refuted, didn't he?
Well, that's great. I mean, later in later interviews, he when people ever asked him about this this period in his life, he'd always say, "I can't remember any of it." That was kind of the get out, wasn't it? I
And he
can't
probably
remember a thing,
couldn't, because
he's probably right.
he was a cocaine addict. I mean, it's a little bit like the, I'm gay, I'm bisexual,
Yeah.
and then it was a little bit like that.
Well, that gets referenced here.
Right.
That was only about 3 years, before this. So it starts off with a bit of a paranoid tone. So we think we've got an audience, says the spokesperson, in the Bowie suite. We're pretty sure the operator will be listening in. This is the Los Angeles operator. We think we have a connection. We will not, repeat, not be listening. They always say that, says the Bowie person. And finally, a big hello to all of you people over there from all of me over here. What's happening? Eek, it's David. So already he's feeling like people are listening in.
The paranoia was
conversation.
just absolutely, and again, it goes hand in hand with cocaine, but I mean, the paranoia is just omnipresent, isn't it?
So you're thinking, telephone operators, are they bootlegging the conversation? Are they listening? Are they there all the time? He talks about, Anthony O'Grady talks about Bowie. He says, as always, he speaks with an accentless clip tone, very English but very anonymous all at the same time. The sort of voice that goes with whatever personality its owner is wearing at the time, which sort of feeds into the Bowie myth, doesn't it, really? I'm putting this on.
It does, but also there's that great stuff. I mean, obviously we know more about Bowie now than we ever did because we did the podcast, but there's those stories which kept surfacing about him, and it's terrible. We've talked about it before, like when you're in a band, unwisely perhaps, but when you go somewhere, you kind of start adopting the accent, so, and you can't have, you got to, like, have a laugh in the van. If you're in the van for 6 hours and you're on your way to Cornwall,
I think I know what's coming up here.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it, but it's almost inevitable that you start shouting, "Get off my land!" I did it. Sorry.
Yes, there you go.
But the story was that Bowie would just turn into whoever he was talking to. Like if he was talking to an Australian person, after a while he would be, he'd have a cork hanging from his hat and he'd be called him Cobber.
Safari suit.
So that's the thing, really. He's got this really, we know David's voice, don't we? But it is, as he described it, quite clipped and not really of any accent.
Yeah.
But then, of course, if he gets into company with an accent, he can adopt it immediately.
A blank canvas.
A blank canvas.
Yeah. So, Young Americans has come out earlier this year. It talks about that. It also talks about the fact he's split with his longtime manager, Tony DeFries, which is a real crucial moment in Bowie's life. Soon afterwards, said there were rumours he was planning a concert tour Brazil. No Brazil. But he did spend some time recording Detroit street punk artist Iggy Pop. The midget who'd inspired the song Gene Genie. It's a strange tone. It's a very odd.
What's that all about?
The whole kind of, the not quotes, it's a very strange tone sort of written by Anthony O'Grady. You kind of wonder where it's coming from. And there's an inevitable, about 2 or 3 pages in here, the reference to Chameleon, which is the thing is like, it's like a red flag, isn't it? The Bowie piece.
Further down the line, we got to know that he hated that, and the point being that chameleons change their colour to try and fit into whatever's going on around them, whereas Bowie tried to not fit in with whatever was going on.
Yeah, that's exactly
not a chameleon then, but we know that. But the strange thing is, obviously, it's quite... he's obviously done this interview and then probably just licensed it out to lots of different magazines. So the bottom line is, there's no real identity. So if it was somebody from the NME, if it was Charles Shaw Murray doing it, or Alan Jones, or any of these people, then it would have a slant and a kind of style about it that you would expect. But it's just quite generic. There's some funny attitudes in there. I like calling Iggy Pop a midget, but it's a little bit kind of again, a little bit kind of flat.
Well, it's disjointed as well. I mean, he starts off talking about each track on Young Americans. I didn't know that. So Win, which is one of my favourite Bowie tunes ever, he says this one, he said it was a get up off your backside sort of song, a mild precautionary sort of morality song that's written about an impression left on me, says David, by people who don't work very hard or do anything much or think very hard. Don't blame me because I'm in the habit of working hard. That's what it is. It's easy. All you've got to do is win. I didn't know that was the meaning behind that.
No, well, you do now.
Yeah, there you go. And then, as we've done in the interview from 1973, the last one, he talks about the state of the world. He's really interested in where it's going, not just about music, but just like culture, with the decadence. And where is the decadence?
Well, you would kind of expect that from Bowie, but there's one part of it where he talks about economics, about global economics, and how the world is in a mess. And of course, at this point in time, financially, he's in a mess.
He is, yeah.
He's just split with DeFries, and everybody knows he had that bad deal that he's often talked about. But it's ticking round again, that paranoia. So we're talking about how the whole world has got no money, and the economics are all up in the air. And but really, the bottom line is that he's probably just thinking, I'm skint. I'm David Bowie, even after Young Americans, you know, I mean, obviously, getting the #1 in America and all that kind of stuff will have brought the coffers in, but as we know, Tony DeFeece was still getting a large chunk of it, and Bowie was still paying off debt.
Yeah, so we flip from, you know, he's talking about fascination from Young Americans to the morality of the world and economics, and how morals should be straightened up for a start. So the whole morality of the world, he says it borders on the Philistine at the moment. So he's skipping around here, and then he goes to talk about music and radio, and the fact that radio in America is just so samey, and unless you're on the top 40, you're just not going to get played anywhere. She's got all kind of fair and valid judgments, aren't they? But he's skipping around all over the place here, and it's almost like he's been allowed. He's either been edited, sort of, you know, filleted all these kind of quotes out, or he's just free flowing mentally.
The thing is that it's quite obvious there in this conversation that he's bored talking about not only other people's music. I mean, it's obviously devoured music, but at this point in time, he's very cynical about it. Didn't he say it was a toothless old woman? Rock and roll,
absolutely.
He's dead and all that kind of stuff. But he really, really, really hates talking about his own music. He's just like, I can't be bothered with this, and that's. And I can only draw a comparison about when I interviewed David, and it was the last time I ever met him, but that was the thing, you know, I was trying to get him to talk about the record and the reality tour and all that kind of stuff, and he was not having it. He wanted to talk about, it's that thing about, you know, they found seahorses in the Thames for the first time in 25 years. That's interesting, you know, and he would just talk about anything other than and which is, again, just shows his intellect and my lack of intellect. But, you know...
Well, you had a brief, didn't you? Like I would have, you know.
Well,
it's up to the artist where they go with all that stuff. Talks about, he says he's gone through some pretty interesting changes recently. He said, I'd like to do something that's actively concerned with trying to clear up the whole mess. I have an idea, but I'd rather do it than say it. But as it is, the situation's just nonsensical. It goes round in never decreasing circles. He says, rock and roll certainly hasn't fulfilled its original promise. And he had a quote about the toothless old woman. That's what it's become.
Yeah. And he also, he's taking the mickey out of Bowie, but he said, David Bowie, the guardian of morality.
Yeah.
All that kind of, so I think he's a bit taken aback, really, by the way that David is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So then we get on to the sort of the quotes that have been oft quoted in all the biographies since. So he's asked, so what's the next step then? Talking about rock and roll, all right. And so, dictatorship, says Bowie. There will be a political figure in the not too distant future who will sweep this part of the world like early rock and roll did. You probably hope I'm not right, but I am. My predictions are very accurate, always. And then O'Grady goes into, sort of buys into that and talks about Jean Dixon, who I hadn't heard of before, but she was a religious clairvoyant who predicted the assassinations of JFK and Robert Kennedy as well.
Yeah, she got it wrong though, didn't she, about Nixon?
Yeah, well, she predicted Watergate, but she said he'd ride through it and he'd be fine.
He'd be all right. So she wasn't that reliable.
A bit like Nostradamus, you know, a bit hit and miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know. Anyway, says O'Grady, back to Mr. Rent and Apocalypse. Bowie says, you've got to have an extreme right front come up and sweep everything off its feet and tidy everything up. Then you can get a new form of liberalism. So here you're on really kind of dangerous territory, aren't you?
He's so unguarded. I mean, he's not got a manager at this point in time. And let's face it, I mean, a manager for Bowie would pretty much just be a financial manager, wouldn't he? Because I mean, he got was it David Lippman was the
that's right, yeah,
who was a financial guy and a lawyer and all that kind of stuff. And obviously Tony DeFeece was based in that same kind of world. And so Bowie's probably never really had, since Ken Pitt, anybody telling him artistically or suggesting to him artistically what you might do or what might be a bad move for your own persona, for your own public persona. So there's nobody there going, no, David, leave it, David. I mean, the great thing is as well, Bowie just sat in a room on the phone. He might be sat there with Jeff McCormack, who knows?
Yeah.
But there's nobody there going, oi, don't rein it in, but taking the phone off him and putting it down because he's completely rambling about this dangerous stuff.
Unlike some very famous musician I interviewed once who stayed nameless, and I was sat across the table and there was somebody actually sat in the middle of us, sort of giving him the nod, giving him the nudge. We don't go there, do we?
I know what you're talking about. What happened? No names, no pat drill.
Happened a few times that. Anyway, best thing that happened, says David, is for an extreme right government to come. It'll do something positive at least. to cause commotion in people, and they'll either accept the dictatorship or get rid of it. You know, so and then somehow it gets pulled back to Bowie's own character. He says, well, I never had much luck telling people I was an actor, so I let everybody else figure it out. I don't really want to go into any of that. It's been chewed around and boiled around. I mean, a man does what he has to do.
Right, okie dokie.
More stuff going on. And so we get on to what he's up to at the moment. He does call Young Americans plastic soul again here, which is an oft-used phrase, wasn't it? But Bowie brilliantly got in there first, so nobody could accuse him of doing plastic soul.
Right.
He's talking about, he says, whatever thing I was doing at the time, it's a bit like what we were saying about his voice and putting accents on. I adopted a character for it. I've said that so many times now, I'm getting used to trotting it out. I might look like Jar Jar Gabor next month or Marlon Brando, you can never tell, because I don't know what I'll feel like then. If anything, maybe I've helped establish that rock and roll is a pose above all else.
Right, okie dokie.
So talks more about the album. The one bum note, I would say. I mean, he's talking about Across the Universe, which was the Beatles cover that he did on probably the only misstep on Young Americans, isn't it? And he says, I like it a lot and I sing it very well.
Yeah, he probably knows actually that it's the weakest track on it, and it's like a protest too much a little bit, isn't it? I love the bit here where he's talking about what he's going to be doing next, and he's talking about being in The Man Who Fell to Earth. He's talking about writing screenplays and being a producer and director and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a little exchange between him and Anthony O'Grady. I've been offered a film called A Bluebird, a very dry, high French fairy tale with nothing to say. It's been directed by a wonderful director, but the whole film stinks, and I turned it down. So that's the Elizabeth Taylor one.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But then he goes on, he asks, has Bowie seen Tommy? No, I haven't. Do you intend to? No, I don't. Really? Yeah, I don't like rock and roll very much. Well, what do you think of Ken Russell as a director? I don't like him at all. No, we better skip that. So he's not going to lay into Ken Russell there, not keen at all.
Yeah, so he talks about the fact he's filming The Man Who Fell to Earth at this point. He says the film's about Howard Hughes.
Yeah, I've heard him say that before,
I think. He says, well, it might be, it might not be. He says, I play the starring role. How about that for a piece? Isn't he a jammy bugger, that Bowie? I don't know, in the business 5 minutes, he's taking work away from veterans already.
I like the very end of this whole thing. So, I mean, again, it's just a very disjointed and strange kind of scenario and point in his life. But this is how it finishes. It says, hey, said Bowie cheerfully, they're taking me away. Truncheons and Tommy guns. And they're saying, come with us, David. I'll speak to you next time I've got an album or something else. And we'll talk about something else. So, again, because he's talking all the time about how he don't want to talk about his music. And then he goes off on different tangents. And he says to him, yeah, all right, well, I'll speak to you again when I've got a new album out, but we won't talk about it.
That's it, brilliant.
So, typical Bowie all the way too. So, there you go. It's a strange old period in Bowie's life. And it's a strange old edition of The Enemy.